everyone, and welcome to episode 66 of Podcast of Five Rings, your source of enlightenment in the realm of video games, tabletop, anime, film, and tech. Each episode of Podcast of Five Rings releases Monday mornings on iTunes and SoundCloud, and Talk About Topic day by day on YouTube, with the full video releasing on Friday. To catch updates about the podcast or for other news, give us a follow on your social media platform of choice, listed in the description below. I'm your host, GM, and overseer of Podcast of Five Rings, Obsidian, joined tonight by the Dark Fortune Duelist Meta.
Yar.
He's got, is it Talk Like a Pirate Day?
No,
that was close. It was a few weeks ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like, I think it was the 19th last month, and I didn't even notice it until it was that night. I was like, well, damn it.
I missed my whole chance to walk with a peg leg, had my parrot, my eye patch.
I had everything ready. I had a whole pirate outfit in my closet, prepped, and then I forgot.
God dang it.
I was going to go rent a boat, and I was going to go plunder. It's going to be great.
Sell the seven seas. Leave this world behind.
Sail the seven streams.
Well, happy belated Talk Like a Pirate Day to you, sir.
Thank you.
And we got the resident wild card, Mal.
Who are you people? Where am I?
I don't know. Where are any of
us? I've used this joke before.
Where are any of us?
Quiet, Mao. Captives don't talk.
We've returned from our bonds in the Shadow Realm. We all got banished there for the past few weeks.
We did. I definitely did, for sure.
Real life hits you like a truck, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tets was in partying and gambling in Vegas for 2 weeks.
Oh, I'm sure.
Spending all of his money rolling them dice, and then he threw his back out rolling his dice.
It was just so much rolling of the die that he eventually he pulled the muscle on it, and that throughout his whole day. It was so hard rolling those dice at that craps table. Just roll after.
They're a lot heavier than gaming dice, right?
Yeah, and you have to throw them a little bit harder because you have to make sure they bounce off the wall once, otherwise it doesn't count. So you really got to put some effort into it.
Well, I'm taking your money now. They didn't bounce. Didn't bounce against the wall. You lose. Dealer wins.
Do it again, and we're gonna have to eject you from the game.
So yeah, it's October now. It's the month of Spoopy.
Spoopy, the skeleton.
Oh yes, like all the memes say.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what have you guys been up to other than life?
Well, I mean, work, video games.
Work.
Yes, that's all right.
Saw the My Hero Academy movie. That's why I couldn't be here last week.
How was it? Because a friend invited me, and I had to actually skip out on that.
I quite liked it, but I mean, it's like watching the anime just in a longer format. The story is like what you would expect from that sort of like self-contained, can't do anything that breaks the actual manga or
the canon,
story, canon type thing. But it was fun.
So it's kind of like the Naruto movies in that sense, then.
I guess.
How much edge was in the movie? I need to know where Tokuyami is in the movie.
You see him on the sidewalk once.
Okay, gotcha. Is Todoroki in it at all?
Yes.
Too? Does he get more to do?
Yes.
Than that, yeah. It's like him and Bakugo and Deku are obviously going to be like the ones who probably do anything.
Then
Urahara.
Uhara
from Star Trek.
Yeah, Uhara.
Momo? No. What is that's the creation chick's girl's name? I'm blanking on it.
Yeah, that's it, Momo.
Okay, yeah. And then
Momoko, or I think it's
Jiro with the earjacks.
Yeah.
And then also the electricity guy and Mineta for some reason. They really didn't need to be in it, but those are kind of the ones that
Mineta's like my least favorite character of the main ones.
He's not a lot of people's favorites, but he's the author's favorite. So.
Yeah.
Like the worst thing about
perverted jokes.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get into topics, shall we?
Sure.
Meta, you're up first. What do you got?
Well, past couple of weeks have obviously been pretty busy. I've been I had to go out 2 weeks ago because I had to get a car looked at, and it turns out I had a recall on it. So I
Oh.
yeah,
nice.
I had to.
What kind of car is it?
It is a Lamborghini, obviously.
Like they never recall anything.
I know,
Yeah,
right?
I know, right?
So I just got on my private jet and I flew over to Italy. And I had them take care of it. No, no,
You
I
got
have
a Ferrari
a
instead.
yeah, yeah. I don't know my cars that well. So no, it was I had a Toyota Corolla, and they had a recall on it. Apparently, some of the models were designed to be a little bit more sporty. The way the steering column was set and the amount of work and torsions put on it for the programming is designed to be a little bit more sporty.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out somebody might have not carried the fucking one, because what ended up happening was that these cars, if they were put under too much stress, the steering column would snap. It would just completely snap.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, you're locked off from your front wheels, which the car is front wheel drive. So
Yeah.
as you can imagine, you really can't continue to steer anymore. And they decided that maybe that's a bad thing. So
Until we get self-steering cars, right? Get on that.
yeah,
Elon
until we get
Musk.
self-steering cars. Well, hopefully they don't use the the steering column either. Otherwise, you're still screwed.
Yeah.
So brought in, they had to just update the computer on it, and fine. It just takes like an hour and a half, because I guess they also wash your car in the process. Because when I got back to the car, there was water
was
on
all
the front of the
clean.
window. It was clean. Yeah, I was like, what the fuck? But that was the last Thursday, and then, well, no, 2 Thursdays ago, and then last Thursday, I went over and I had to talk to Dad because he needed. So. I just took the whole day off, and not the whole day off, but I kind of
Left early.
Yeah. So I was just doing that for the whole evening, just with them, making okay, because had looking around inside the body, but it took the. So I was making sure he was.
Yeah.
And then just these past couple weeks, it's just been very. But it did obviously gave me time to think a lot of. And,
a lot of just sitting and thinking.
Yeah, pretty much. And like at first, like it jumped to like just gaming in general. I was like, what am I gonna do for the next week? What's the games that were coming out that I was looking forward to? I should probably get a list of those. And then I started like looking into Starfinder, because I've recently actually started up a Starfinder campaign for the gaming group.
Nice.
Friday up. So we got that up. We got running, and I was looking at some of the rules and whatnot. And I mean, I love creating things. I love working on things because and it's no fault of my own. There's no fault on this one. I enjoy being busy a lot. It lets me do stuff. So I mean, I'm running a game on Sunday. I've got a game on Friday. Hang with the group Thursday. We're doing a GM group of Divinity 2. So we're using that system, and then on every other Saturday, I'm stuff for P group and Final Fantasy. And that uses the Fate system. So I've got 4 games running. Which is a lot, yes, but it's kept me busy, and it's not been an overload yet, so we'll see how that goes. But obviously it leads to a lot of creation time, a lot of working on things, looking at something and saying like, how can I make it better? And I mean, that started with Starfinder, but then obviously it led into like kind of looking at different versions of games, because I was like, there's a lot of games that come out in the past, there's different editions and whatnot. And they've changed rules, and they do a lot of things, and you sometimes get very big extremes, like say from 4th edition L5R to the newest 5th edition, where it's not only in the hands of a completely different company, but a humongously different system. Although at its core, it's still the rule keep design, but there's a lot of different things that incorporate for it, especially with the unique. And then you get things that are drastic and change on a more fundamental level of the design intent of itself, or something like a 3.5 to 4th edition. And then there's things that are not so much different, but simplified or made sleeker and cleaner, which is like 3.5 and 5th edition. And it kind of got me thinking, like, with all these different editions, all these different rules, and I was kind of looking them at the back and forth to pull inspiration from them, because you can still incorporate ideas even if the system doesn't utilize it and whatnot. And it got me thinking about D&D in general and the different editions it's gone through. It's been through, 1st edition, advanced, and that's technically 2nd edition as well. Then you had 3rd edition, which was then revised for 3.5. Then you led in 4th edition, which had its ups and downs. and then eventually the 5th edition, which has emerged and become a very, very popular system. And I know we've all played Dungeons and Dragons. I know we've all, it's kind of, you might argue that's like where most people would start from. In fact, I would posit that as a fact. But it kind of got me thinking, is like, there's a lot of different versions that we like about these games. There's different editions that we really enjoy, and editions that either don't hit home, or some people would even say probably deserve to burn in the pits of hell itself. And I was thinking, like, you guys, you've played them, and what were your favorite editions? And what were the editions that didn't click with you, or ones that you think should earnestly just have been shot before it even got a chance to go out into the world?
What about you, Mal?
All right. Well, I've played 2, 3, 4, and 5. 3 being 3.5.
Yeah.
3.
That kind of, so it depends a bit. Like, man, I really like 3.5 and 5e to the point where sometimes I'm not sure which one I prefer more. It would be an easy choice for 5e if there was more in the system. Like, I guess it depends. Like, if you want to look at it from rules, like if I were to only choose from the core books of each system, it would be 5e.
I could see that easily, yeah.
Yeah, but 3.5 has so much, which I know a lot of, like, which is also a downside for a lot of people, like Tets.
And me.
It's a lot of crunch.
Yeah.
It's a lot of crunch.
But I love all those different character options and stuff.
I can.
So
I.
That's where it becomes difficult.
I know where you're coming from on that, because options to me are such a big thing. I love choices. So.
Yeah, it's always cool when you can basically have. I can start with like a barbarian and end up 10 different places, and someone else who's playing a barbarian too. Just with the whole prestige class system and stuff, and
yeah. If I could guarantee like that I was going to get to play a bunch of games, like with the same system, it would be 3.5. Definitely.
There was a lot. God, that system. Yeah. I mean, there's so much to that game, and the OGL, I believe is what it was called. Allowed for so much. A lot of broken things, but it still allowed for a lot of good things to come through.
But as far as mechanical wise, I really like the simplicity that 5e brought. Like, there's a lot going on in 3.5 mechanics wise, to the point where like it can definitely become a detriment. And as for the other editions, I don't hate 4e as much as others. I'm basically fine with it. And honestly, if I had to choose between playing a 2e game and a 4e game, I would probably choose 4e.
Do that.
I like 2e in my Baldur's Gate, like when it's computerized.
I think that's how most people have experienced 2e.
Right. But I don't really want to play it when I have to like look through the books and remember certain things, like Thaco, and which I know if I used it enough, I would remember it more, but I don't. And Baldur's Gate does it for me, so I don't have to care. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, I wouldn't want to play a ton of 4e games, probably. Like, there's definitely a limit, which is why it's not my favorite or anything. But I think I still prefer it more than 2e. And, I mean, they basically took a bunch of the good ideas from 4e into 5e, like hit dice and stuff.
Are you trying to tell me that you don't like a good old-fashioned Thaco score?
Nope.
She's thick with that Thaco. How thick is your Thaco? Is it Bowsette level thick?
Oh God!
Oh jeez!
You knew I was gonna work it.
Honestly, I'm side tangent. I'm not gonna say that I was full in love with the whole Bowsette thing.
You're in love with Boozette.
I mean,
God, did I ride that wave?
As we all did, Meta. As we all did.
I enjoyed what that was so much. Like, so much came out of that. I
liked all the mangaka's drawings over.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was great.
Awesome. But anyways,
Yes, I'm sorry about that.
No, it's fine.
Well, it's October now, so everyone's into Buet, right?
yeah, everyone's into Bouzette now. Bouzette.
And Yoshi or whatever.
What about you, Obs?
Okay,
Man
so
of mystery.
I've never played 2E, even though I own actually a bunch of books for it.
Wait, what?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
still
got
have
a
quite
bunch
few
at a
2E
yard
books.
sale for like $1 a book. Some at like a local used bookstore. So I mean, I have probably like five 2E books, but I've never played it. I've heard lots of stories about it. I have friends who grew up on AD&D and stuff. But yeah, like the first game I ever played was 3.5, but it wasn't a full campaign. And I've never played a full campaign of 3.5. I've only played like one-shots before I really got heavy into role-playing. What were you going to say, Mel?
I was just going to say my first RP experience in general was actually a Slayers source book based on 3.5.
Wow.
Wow.
That is random.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of
The
people
the
like
DM
Slayers, so I'm not
loved
surprised.
Slayers, and I quite like Slayers.
Yeah, I like Slayers too.
I don't think I've ever played it.
The first
But watched
campaign,
it.
first campaign of a game I fully played was actually Star Wars D6. But anyways, so yeah, never really played a whole lot of 3.5. Like Mal was saying, I kind of fall on the side of there's too much crunch. It's like crunchy
Did you ever
peanut
play
butter.
any of the D20 L5R?
Yes, I did. I played probably about 5 sessions of that.
Okay, that's 3.0.
It's 3 point. Yeah, it's a version of.
Just gonna
of
say that might
D&D
be
at that
more
time.
where more of your experience comes from.
Yeah, I've actually probably played more Oriole Adventures than I have actual 3.5, but played a pretty good amount of 4E. More 5E now than 4E, but I really like 4E. It was my favorite until basically me and my group played a whole 5E game and 5E pulled ahead. But 4E actually has a lot of choice as far as class goes. Like by the end of the game, there's a ton of classes and alternate powers and stuff for the classes that you could pick. That's basically where a lot of your like agency and choice of how to build your character came from, was your class features. And I was never one for the whole like I always refer to as the console war, but the edition war for D&D. It was very much like until 5e came out, it was very much like divisive anytime anyone talked about it. Like anytime anyone said they liked 4e, people would jump down their throat. Anytime the 4e people said 3.5 was crap, and it started an argument. So I really enjoy 4E. I mean, it makes combat really fun and interesting. Fighters are really, like I've talked about before, I think we had a topic about our favorite builds. The 4E fighters, like probably one of, if not my favorite class for minigame, just because I love the way it tanks. Is very tactical.
I mean, the whole edition though was very tactical. Like
Exactly.
Some people even point out that pretty much if you love tabletop miniature games, that is like the de facto edition for you.
Yeah.
Because it does exactly what you kind of want, which is almost, I would almost argue in a sense, is kind of like what Final Fantasy Tactics is. It's a small group of units that have a lot of abilities that can work in tandem with one another and have certain roles that they can fill and sometimes maybe split a little bit out of.
Yeah, they broke it. I mean, a lot of people's complaints is that they kind of broke it into like MMO style stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, that was a big.
A lot of people felt like they were playing an MMO, and my biggest thing is probably like a lot of the classes at least feel samey between each other, especially when they're in the same like what was it, defender controller thing.
Yeah, that was a lot of. Unfortunately, there was kind of like I don't remember the term.
Like they took a lot of the like. They all felt mechanically very similar, and they took away a lot of the flavor built in, or whatever.
I can't remember the term, but it's like a term is like monoism or something where it's like everything's kind of just the same, and regardless, it might be presented differently. Like, oh, this is fast slash, and oh, you get heavy swing, but they have
there was always like have like a really accurate attack where you get like a +2 bonus to the attack roll, and it would just do weapon damage, or take 2 attacks. Or do like a double weapon damage attack, but it was less accurate.
And then like every class was built based on as you level up, it's like, all right, everyone's this level now. Everyone gets their, out of encounter ability or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And then like everyone's this level, everyone gets a 1 per day ability now.
Yeah.
That's-
There wasn't really like
I
a
think.
variance in how
Which
your level
they
scaled.
did try a few classes towards the end of life that broke away from that, I believe. I think they're called like the essentials, or like there's like a fighter, a slayer, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a few others, but not very many. But I do remember them trying to address it, and then I think they're probably just like, well, we're going to go into 5e now.
Yeah, a lot of design philosophy and kind of what their vision of the game was. I think they basically said that the reason it was designed kind of MMO-y was Wizards really started focusing on people who played online with friends across the country and the world, and they were going to launch basically in. I read I watched a video about this. It's really fascinating a few weeks ago about 4E and like the design of it and stuff. They were going to launch their own online virtual tabletop meeting thing that Wizards was designing. I don't think it ever came to fruition.
Yeah.
So they wanted it to kind of play very much like a video game.
It's not surprising that they probably felt they could get more people by making it accessible online.
Yeah.
Like, there's way more people that would be able to play the game if you could just easily set up an online game versus, in person. Which I mean, before, like, recently, tabletop RPGs has kind of like had a
boom,
definitely an upswing in like people even playing face to face with things like Critical Role and stuff. And now you have Roll20 and all that, so it doesn't need to be tactical even, and all.
Yeah, I mean, I also, if I actually remember, because I used to get the Dragon magazine actually for a while, and I kind of followed like what was going on. And if I remember correctly, there was an interview at some point or something. I don't remember the exact source, and God knows I'll never find it. But I remember them specifically stating that they wanted to aim the market at an area where people were more familiar with.
Right, and I mean that was probably during like when WoW and stuff had huge
it was
huge mark, huge
2008,
it was
2009.
absolutely the reason. I mean, that was the underlining text, was that we want to make a game that's more like the WoW that everybody plays.
We can get some of that user base and probably double.
And that really was the goal.
Yeah, pull a small fraction of WoW players into the game and still like double or triple your user base or whatever, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm sure that was what the goal was, because I remember, like I said, I remember seeing reviews on it, or an interview with something on review, but an interview with somebody just saying that they want to expand the user base. They want to make it more accessible, which is a term for it. We want to make it in some way that'll get more people in.
Which they did do with 5e, but in a completely different way.
Yes, they did.
It was basically the best of both worlds. 4E is actually pretty crunchy, but all the crunch is what your character specifically does. The system itself is a lot more simpler in a way like 5E is simple compared to 3.5. But yeah, 5E is to me just like also just the best of both worlds, like you were saying. It takes cool stuff like rests and hit DOS and hit DOS or healing surges, basically.
When my biggest complaint of 5e is that there's not enough of it, it's pretty good.
Yeah, that's like a good complaint. It's a backhanded compliment, Mal.
Well, I mean, it's a fair complaint to have, though, because
it is.
But it also shows how much you already you do like it, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Because if your biggest complaint is that like I want more stuff for the game, then eventually it's going to get to the point where there's a lot of stuff for the game. Mm-hmm. Ideally. I will admit they have been kind of, maybe I'm wrong, but from what I've seen, there's not a lot of books. Like there might be supplements.
Lots of adventure books.
Yeah.
Well, I think they figured, or I think they saw the numbers, and like adventures sell better, and they're a lot smaller now. Like when 5e came out, I think it was like 16 was like the top amount of people for in D&D compared, or the WotC section of D&D, which is not a lot of people, right? Mm-hmm. Like they're very small section of Wizards of the Coast now, or I mean now they're probably a bit bigger. Maybe, who knows? But that was 16 people spread against design, art, social media, and stuff.
Yeah.
But they have been kind of ramping it up a bit, even if it is still a lot of adventure stuff. Like you just have what is it, Waterdeep?
Yeah.
Yep. Waterdeep just came out.
And they're about to have a
Eberron
sequel
and
to
Ravnica's about to come out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They
and
definitely
then they
tried
have
a
a
lot
5
of
to
stuff.
20. Yeah, level 5 to 20, just random. They're like Waterdeep 1 to 5, and then this other book 5 to 20.
Yeah. Which I don't think they've had at 220. I think the highest it's gone is 15, I believe. But
That sounds right.
the coolest thing, in my opinion, about 4E, and this is more from a GM aspect. I mean, some players probably appreciate this too, but the monster design in 4E is the best out of any of the editions. Like, they're all cool. They have really cool abilities. Everyone has something interesting to do as far as a monster and like role playing the monsters in the battle and stuff. They all have a cool choice. They're not just like giants in 5e or just sacks of hit points with a club. Like in 4e, a giant would have like different abilities. There might be recharge abilities, like stuff you could do and powers that you could like choose from. So like the monster design in 4e is super sweet, and it's actually I sometimes like refer back to it because I saw a guy recommend that while I was running my last game.
I think though they also messed up on the. I think a lot of the math is wrong though with the 5e stuff. I remember that, or 4e monster stuff. I remember
it never felt bad to me, but I think you're basically supposed to. Like, the game expects you to have magic items for the players.
Well, I've seen people.
So the monsters are balanced around, like, what gear you should have at that level, essentially.
I've seen posts where, like, I'm running 4E game. What should I expect? And people are like, don't use the early monster stuff without using this converter because they really didn't know, or, like, they really got the early stuff wrong or
really?
something.
I didn't feel like there was a balance issue, really, when I ran it, so... I don't know, but different experiences.
How big was your group size? I mean, that might
like 4 people. It's like a typical group.
Oh,
I don't know.
But yeah, I also liked how everyone was on a more even playing field power-wise. I think that's something else a lot of people...
I like the idea of that, but again,
it
really just came out to a lot of the everyone's like building.
People who want to play wizards want their wish at level 9 and, you know, their time stop and stuff like that. So, I mean, I understand.
Right.
Yeah.
But I just like that I had cool, interesting tactical choices I could make as a fighter. Like, I got as many powers as a wizard or a cleric did. And that was interesting to me.
So what about the one that you like least? And why?
I would just say 3.5. Not that I hate it, but I just haven't got enough experience with it, and it's really crunchy. And with 5e, I basically have no reason to ever really go back to it.
There's like
to be
50 5e books or 3.5 books or whatever.
Yeah,
so.
there's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of them are also like third-party ones too.
Well, I mean like even first party. There's a lot.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my buddy has a lot of them.
I didn't think there was that many.
I don't know if that's the exact. I mean, I could probably pull it up real quick, but anyway.
What about you, Meta?
Well, I mean, I'm gonna jump over here, and I'm actually gonna say that I have a particular fondness for. Thank you. That's rude. God. I have a particular fondness for 3.5. That's.
I think you grew up playing 3.5 too, didn't you?
3.5 was pretty much how I got introduced. Actually,
God.
I got in before what? How many books?
Between 3.0 and 3.5, it's 110.
Holy shit!
That's across different. That's including. So in 3.5, it used Greyhawk as the default setting.
Yeah.
So there were Forgotten Realms and Eberron books as well. So it's also including
Dark
those.
Sun.
It's a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a lot.
That's still tons.
Yeah.
That's like what my ideal is, like when you have 100 plus books. I'm like,
right.
To me, it's like so many options.
Exactly.
So much money.
Very similar.
It's honestly, I mean, I grew up with 3.5, but I mean, I've given, I will say, I did not give a fair shot to 4th edition. But I did look up the books, I looked at it and whatnot, but I never got a chance to play it, and I never really had an interest for it. Some because the game didn't really interest me at all.
We played a few games with my group, but most of my group, well, there were 2 people who really didn't like it. Me and Tets were fine with it. I think Tets preferred it to 3.5. He would have much rather preferred 4.0 to 3.5. But
I see that. I mean, but it's just 3.5 for me. I just fell in love with it. there was just the ideas, like, there's so many options that I loved the art styling, the coloring to the books. There was just something mystical and magical about them that my rosy nostalgia will never seem to let go of. Um, but and moreover, there was just I liked the books. I liked what they were. I liked the crunch. I liked how every time you had a new book come out, it really did add in like new classes to play, new
Yeah.
feats to use, new spells to get a hold
Though
of.
the downside to that was there are a lot of classes I like and have no more support outside the book they're in.
Yeah.
Like the Dragon Shaman in Player's Handbook 2.
Oh god,
That's
that
it.
poor class.
Sorry, I think you got one more. You got a feat or whatever in another Dragon book or whatever, like extra aura. But because I love that class, but,
It didn't. I loved Dragon Shaman. I played a Dragon Shaman for a
or
little bit.
dual aura. But yeah,
But 3.5 was full of crunch. It had a lot. There was a lot of options for me, and I
mhm.
really enjoyed like the whole Ultimate Warrior book, the Ultimate, well, not Ultimates, but they were the complete series, which was the Complete Warrior, the Complete Rogue, the Complete, Sorcerer, Wizard, or Magic, stuff like that.
There
I
are 8
enjoyed
complete books.
Yeah, I wish we got more of that.
I really like the fact that those books really did push around a
I
certain.
also liked certain. I liked the Dungeonscape, Cityscape books, which have a lot of like which talk about a lot of like running campaigns in certain like Cityscape is about running campaigns in cities, and it gives you a lot of stuff, rules, and like just things to consider and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then Dungeonscape is the same thing, but for the dungeons. And then
It
there's
was
like
just-
the Draconomicon, which is all about dragons.
there was a lot of books. I mean, there was
Yeah.
so many books to go over. I actually loved the fact that it came out with effectively two magic, I believe was it two or one? Maybe I'm wrong.
What?
Two magic item compendium.
Oh,
But I think I might be mistaking just the back of either the player's handbook or the handbook with all
think
the magic.
Flori
items.
I
had
know there was
two.
at least there was one. There's the Magic Item Compendium is one
Yes.
book,
Yes.
but yeah, it's a large book of magic.
love
I think is everything in it unique. I think because
I
the Spell
believe
Compendium I think
so.
gathers spells from previous books into it as well.
Yes,
but I think
Spell
the Magic
Compendium
Item
gathered-
Compendium is
believe, yeah.
all unique items. I think.
Yep. That was pretty much it.
Oh, Magic of the Incarnum or whatever was also one of my favorites and didn't get any love outside of it.
There
It was all,
was
binding soul magic to basically create magical item abilities or whatever sort of thing.
I loved the Elder Evils book. That was a
Mhm.
great one. I thought that was amazing.
But yeah, there's
because
a
it gave you
lot of
just,
books
like,
I like.
The Elder Evils book was fantastic because it gave you these end like apocalyptic scenario type fights. They were great and they were just the big things. There was, let's see here, the Tome books as well. You had Tome and of Battle and the Tome
Yeah,
of
I love the
Magic.
Tome of Battle, and I love the idea of most of the Tome of Magic stuff. Unfortunately, there are 3 classes in Tome of Magic, and one is functionally broken, as in does
Yeah.
not work. Like when you see the 3.5 tier list, True Namer is at the listed as broken, just does not work with skills presented in book. Then there's the Shadowcaster, which was also just kind of crap, and then the Binder was good and interesting and fun.
There was the Races series of books as well, like
Yep.
Races of Stone, Races of Dragon, Races of
Races
Wild.
of Destiny,
Yeah.
which is I always played human, so that's my favorite book. It's got the Chameleon, one of my favorite prestige classes.
Pretty good. And then there were some cool books like the Libris Mortis, the Book of the
Oh yeah,
Dead.
that one I think's got the like CR16 undead giant baby. I think
Yes, I believe you're right.
something like that. It's ridiculous.
It's very silly, but I love that book because we actually played an evil campaign and I used the shit out of that book. To
Also,
make an undead character.
Lords of Madness and Heroes of Horror are also in a similar vein of stuff. Like they're also alphabetically, because I'm looking at the list now, right all around each other. It's Heroes of Horror, Libris Mortis, Lords of Madness.
There you go. They were all good books. I mean, but there were so many. There's just the options
there's
I
a
love.
lot.
And I'm a very big crunch person. I really love playing a game that has a lot of deeper stuff. And that obviously leads with the bad, where you end up getting things that are broken. Just very clearly broken,
Yeah.
things that are outside the bounds of what you really want for your game,
Yeah,
and
I
it
like
becomes very
character
apparent.
options. I don't need all the crunch necessarily, but it kind of comes when you have that much character options.
That's
I just want to be able to, always create a new character. Always, every character can be completely different than the last.
I like the idea. What really matters to me is I like the idea is that if you pick up a school or a class, and you can both start, you can both choose the same archetype, quote unquote, and yet you both can make decisions that make you completely different. And it's not just you, but it's your friend next door, and then the guy across the street, and then your buddy from 3 counties away have all started on the same path and ended up different things.
Yeah.
That's what matters to me. I love that. I love it when you can have such uniquely different characters, and that's where a lot of it came to me. Is games that like you could pick up a fighter who admittedly wouldn't be that great by the end.
No.
But you
Usually
could do
fighters were
so
if you
much.
needed a bunch of feats real quick.
Yes, you would
And
just
martial
jump
proficiency
in,
or whatever, right?
Just
Like-
jump in and fight her real fast.
Well, now it's do you want action surge?
Yeah, pretty much.
Pathfinder, I think, has probably the best fighter class out of these.
Yeah,
Gory.
I mean,
Gory.
Pathfinder is effectively the game that I jumped to because it really was.
Yeah.
And like I know we've said this before, Mal, where it's like it's essentially just D&D 3.75.
Yeah, that's what everyone calls it, is 3.75.
But I don't really want to belittle it as well, like the idea, because it truly did take a game that had when you really dig into it, had a lot of busted things about it and fixed up as much as it could cover. And
They dropped
more.
I mean, they basically dropped the use of prestige classes, which is probably my biggest thing I don't like about Pathfinder. But
they did do that. But I think they made I think multi-classing wasn't as penalizing, or at least I've never seen it as penalizing.
Yeah, I don't. That's possibly true. I mean, they added
Probably
archetypes. They added archetypes, which kind of replaced the prestige classes in a way. So that's basically what they did, which I liked. I mean, I prefer both, I guess, but I don't know. It depends. Like,
yeah, but I get what you're coming from. I mean, prestige classes were never that super crazy off on me. Although I would argue that if you're going the ranger route and you truly want to be an amazing ranger, then it's the one time where you definitely want to take arcane archer.
Yeah, character building in 3.5 usually like comes down to you either play a class that you can't get out of, like especially if it's like one that has very little support outside of one book or something. Like generally all your options are stay in this one class or whatever. Like the dragon shaman, you can't really multi-class out of.
Yeah. Well, not effectively anyway.
I think I think there's like one or two that you can do something with your dragon auras, but outside of that,
a lot of 3.5 was just about taking up a was a lot of 3.5 was just about multi-classing and dipping
that's
into,
the other
like,
way
prestiges and shit.
is a bunch of like you could do a bunch of multi-classes with prestige class or something, or but even more than one prestige class. But it was a lot more dippy, I guess, was the other way to go. It's all or nothing sort of a thing.
To go back, I like to just prove that point. When we were playing the evil campaign, I was playing an undead grave knight who had started off as a fighter, dipped into soul eater, and then was a priest who was stealing away magic. So it was very common for like level 20 builds to be like 4 or 5 classes listed between normal classes and prestige classes. Yep, it was just better that way. It was just better.
Yeah.
You could still, certain ones are still great by themselves, like Wizard.
Sure. That was just that would be like min maxing basically.
Yeah. But even if you didn't do that kind of thing and you were just playing a straight up class, the game was still fun even then, as long as you had a group that was worthwhile for it. But going back, I guess just jump back on my points. I really enjoyed the game. I started with it, and it really is my ideal version of what it was, because it had so much to play with, and I love a big sandbox. And I don't want just a sandbox where I can drive my car around in it. I want a sandbox where I can go into every store. I want a sandbox where if I go down to the residential area, I can walk into somebody's front house. They might shout at me, but I don't care. I can walk into the house and they couldn't stop me. I want to take their car. I want to drive it into their neighbor's house.
GTA.
And that neighbor's house this guy can go into. Yeah, pretty much.
Fantasy GTA.
Fantasy GTA. But that's my point. It's like, I want every little detail to be there. I want there's so many things that you can go into and look at and be like, oh, this is really cool. And there's so much variation to it. That's what I love. And it's very hard for me to walk away from that competition.
Yeah, I really wish I could play another 3.5 game.
but on the flip side, the version I actually don't like as much is I'm gonna go down a list here real quickly. I actually think 5 is fine. I actually think 5 is a very good version, and I think it's great as like my first D&D game because it does solve that problem.
It's
There's
the most
not a lot of
noob-friendly.
crunch. It really is.
Yeah.
Absolutely is, and it's a great. I'm glad for it because it really brings in people to see what this game
And I
is.
think the lack of
bounded accuracy is, I think, what makes it so easy.
Yeah.
The mechanics are simple, and it's not as intimidating when it's like when you only have like maybe 5 splat books as opposed to 100, right?
Yeah. It's a little bit different. Just a tad bit different. And then people can understand, like, because I mean, obviously you just only need the 3 to play: Monster Manual, Core Book, and Dungeons DM's book. And that's all you really need to play. But when you say like, well, there's like hundreds of different books, somebody's like, nah, that's too much for me. I'm out.
Right.
Even if they don't recognize it. But like for 5th edition, it's great. It's been simplified down. It's gotten rid of a lot of the junk that's unnecessary. It's done a very nice leveling system with the proficiency bonus just increasing as time goes on, which feels natural and appropriate for a character to get stronger just generally, as opposed to getting like an ability point to spend every 4 levels. And that kind of thing is just really nice. I never played 2nd edition. But I actually had a coworker who still played that even when 4th edition was still out.
Some people still play it now.
Yeah, people still play it now.
Every edition's gonna have it. People
Yeah.
still play it basically.
But I was always very interesting because we would talk a lot because we were both obviously playing games and whatnot. We would talk a lot back and forth. He would tell me about his game and stuff and what they were doing. And it was very interesting because I would kind of help him GM because he was the GM for his game. And I was obviously a part of mine and we were talking back and forth. It was very interesting to listen to the stories that came with. He kind of had like a very stereotypical group. He had like the one arguer who was always trying to get away with stuff. He had the one great role player, but they weren't always that solid with rules at times. It was very stereotypical, like almost that stereotypical like movie group. But it was very fun to listen to what he talked about and to go back and forth and see the work that he like pulled off and tell me like the shit that they did when they were done with the session. And obviously because it was closest to the 3.5 and 3.0, it was kind of I always had a little bit of fondness just because of like what it was and where it led to. And then 4th edition obviously is the edition I'm going to end up saying is really the edition I don't care all that much. And which is really funny because again, like as you pointed out, there's a lot of crunches for the characters, but I just didn't like I didn't like what the game was presenting itself as. And for me, this was going to be a case of presentation. 3.5 presented itself as like, this is a class that has some meaning for the role play for what it is. And these are really what it focuses on and what it does. And it really wasn't caring about trying to fill some either like, damage dealer, tank, controller, healer. It wasn't trying to fill an archetype. It was just trying to be a class that did something with the game. And that's something I earnestly do enjoy. And when 4.0 came out, when it did that approach, it just didn't click with me because I had played the 3.5, and to me, it was like, this class is special because of what it is. If it's good or bad, that's unfortunate. And yes, melee should always get more support because they get totally blown out of the water by magic. And that is something I'm very glad for in 4.0, where they really were similar in strength ranges. And I was like, why couldn't that be in 3.5? But it wasn't clicking for me. I didn't want to play the damage dealer. I didn't want to play the tank. I wanted to play the fighter. I wanted to play the wizard. I wanted to play what the class was, not just another form of a different class that had a different job or role that might have had some small variations in spells and options for it. And that's really what put me off on it, and pushed me away. So it was unfortunate too because like from a tactical standpoint, the game is great. It does wonderful in what it needs to do. And if there was a game where like somebody was like, "Do you want to play a really tactical tabletop game?" I'd be like, "Yeah, let's play 4th edition then." And we would go right into it because I mean that's exactly what you want. It's like, I'm looking for a tabletop game to play, but I want something that's super tactical and whatnot. I'd be like, just pick up the 4th edition of Dungeons & Dragons. It'll exactly hit that itch.
Yeah, one of my friends actually, who was not a fan of 4E, like when they were the most of a fan of 4E was just making a character and doing some fighting, like just like basically arena style playing, as opposed to just basically just doing the battles out, not actually role playing or anything.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen like the argument was that like the game really took like the role play out of things and whatnot. And I know you don't need rules to RP,
Right. Yeah.
obviously, but I mean, the also from the other side, and I've seen
I-
this argument played out in response to that is that you're right, you don't need the rules for role play, but it does kind of set a precedent. If the best option, if all you do is give options to punch something better, generally you're going to default to I should probably just punch the problem. And I mean that can be true. Some obviously might agree, but when your options are more aimed towards one thing, it does kind of set an idea as like this is generally what the game is focusing on.
Depends on what your group wants to do.
Yeah,
you can totally role play with it. I mean, you can do that, like you were saying. You can do that with
Obviously,
any system. So
you can do it with any system.
You
don't need the books for it.
If your D&D group just likes dungeon running and like killing monsters, and that's what they love to do, then like 4E is awesome for that. They're probably gonna have a blast there.
Perfect for you. It is the best version if you just want to punch and fight things. I will hit that itch. So, but yeah, for me, 3.5 really was the top version, and 4.0 was just unfortunately a very low point for me. But I took that as a silver lining because it just meant that I was going to play 3.5 for another number of years before 5th edition dropped.
You had plenty of people to play it with.
I did.
I got into gaming like right when 4E launched, so it's kind of just the natural. That's how we went when we played D&D, and my DM didn't really like running it that much because all his previous groups of D&D were the kind of people who would have loved 4E, who don't really like make characters with backgrounds. They just made stat blocks and wanted to kill stuff. They want to do that with 3.5, but he never ran it with any of them. He ran 4E with us, so I mean, so it was weird because I hear people say that a lot, that it takes like the quote you said, it takes the role playing out of the game. But
yeah, I mean, I saw that.
It less does that, just more focuses on the combat. So, but anyways.